This is infrared sensor footage recorded in 2020 and lasting just under 5 minutes, showing brief areas of contrast moving across the sensor field of view while the platform on-screen attempts to track them. Early in the clip, a darker area of contrast appears from the upper right, and the sensor pans to follow, then moves away, and other transits occur across the lower portions of the frame. At several points, the sensor shifts modes and makes intentional tracking attempts as objects of contrast sweep diagonally and across the bottom right quadrant for short intervals. The imagery is limited to infrared tonal contrasts without a clear daylight reference, and the apparent motion is described here as areas of contrast rather than identified objects. The clip was uploaded to a classified network in October of 2020 and later identified as part of a responsive collection by the all-domain Anomaly Resolution Office, referred to here as ARROW. ARROW assesses that this video is likely derived from an infrared sensor aboard a United States military platform operating within the United States Central Command Area of Responsibility in 2020. The uploader-defined title for this file includes the date October 20th, 2020 and notes 2 platform call signs, and the material was later associated with a set of potentially UAP-related records. On March 6th, 2026, 8 members of the United States House of Representatives requested access to 51 potentially UAP-related records that they allege were held by the Department of War and the intelligence community. In response, ARROW identified a collection of responsive materials stored on a classified network. ARROW also notes that many items in this collection lack a substantiated chain of custody, a fact that limits how analysts can interpret or validate what is shown. Watchers should understand what investigators emphasize in their own words. The imagery here shows repeated transits of contrast across the sensor frame, and the sensor operator changes modes and attempts to acquire or track those transits multiple times. Those operational details are consistent with an infrared sensor responding to transient thermal or contrast signatures and trying alternate tracking modes when confidence is low. The record provided to ARROW and to oversight officials does not include a proven chain linking the recording to a preserved physical platform and clocked forensic record, so causal claims are not supported by the archive alone. The provenance of the clip matters for evaluation. It was uploaded to a classified network in October of 2020, later collected by ARROW during a review of potentially relevant files, and released publicly under the Pursue Release program on May 22, 2026. The source agency listed with the release is the Department of War. Because of gaps in custody documentation and the classified handling of the original files, analysts treating this material note evidentiary limitations even as they describe the sensor behavior visible in the footage. For viewers and researchers, the most tangible aspects are technical and narrow. The video demonstrates short-lived areas of contrast entering from the top right and traversing toward the bottom of the frame, moments when the sensor pans to follow those signatures, and several instances where the sensor changes modes to attempt tracking. There is no on-screen pilot commentary or corroborating radar overlay in the clip provided here, so interpretation beyond what the sensor recorded requires additional records that are not included in this upload. The significance of the clip, as framed by ARROW and by the congressional request, is twofold. First, it is part of a larger set of potentially relevant records that oversight officials have asked to inspect, and second, the lack of a substantiated chain of custody in many files complicates efforts to draw firm conclusions about origins or capabilities. The footage remains an archival sensor recording that illustrates how military infrared sensors can detect transient contrast signatures and how operators respond in real time. This recording is one piece in a wider archive of UAP-relevant material collected, reviewed, and sometimes released through programs like Pursue, and it highlights why provenance and documentation are central to analysis. For more detail on this case, the related sighting reports, the wider archive, and our weekly UAP News podcast, visit uapdrop.com.